Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line, talking about efforts to end homelessness in Nashville. I have a great panel up here and a bunch of calls. So let's go to Reverend Fuzz. Hello, Reverend Fuzz.
Hey, Ben. Give me 60 seconds.
Okay.
I've been working with these. Well, every issue that you have on, I've probably worked in some ways over the past over 35 years. Homelessness is one of those. I remember the numbers being 3,000. I remember Christmas last year we had 3,000 school kids that we tried to sponsor Christmas for. I thought that was so sad. Deuteronomy, some of your listeners will want to read that, Deuteronomy 32nd chapter 235, and hear God describing how the people are and what's wrong with y'all.
Yes.
I'm listening to your guest talk about we don't know what to do. How can you not know what to do after all these years? I'm tired of talking about the problems.
Yes.
Let's get the solutions in place and force those solutions in place. We can't compliment our elected officials if they're not solving this problem. We can't keep giving them props and they're not having the will to make this go away. We can't have Nashville being number 5 worst health in the nation, 12th most segregated in the nation, and compliment it.
Right.
We can't have 3,000 school children homeless in this city and not do something about it. And the answer requires resources. You got to pay the money to hire people to solve this problem. You got to hire police. And the place that the money is, the public treasury. It's not the churches, it's not donations. They don't have enough. We've got to get the top 10% of the wealthiest people to contribute a little bit more and help them to benefit from contributing more. We're not taking their money. We're going to help them to earn more, but we can't be a city. And based on it, I just had a guy arrested yesterday, mentally ill, homeless. Wow, she's a wonderful family, been to college, but he's mentally ill. His mother and wife died in the same year. 4 years I've spent trying to get him into mental health help. One time I got him in, he lasted 4 days, they let him back out. Now he's in jail. I'm hoping and praying that he'll be in the sheriff's mental health program, but I doubt it. We're not helping these people. The guy homeless next door to my church lived outdoors 5 years, Ben. Wow, his dad's a wealthy person, but he loves his children. Come on, we're not demanding that our public treasury and our elected officials fix this problem. We're talking about Donald Trump. Talk about what people need in our communities.
Yes.
Thank you, Ben.
Reverend Fuzz, thank you. All right, what do you think about what he's saying? He's a little frustrated that we've talked about this for so long and there's not more being done.
Amen, Reverend Fuzz.
Standing right with us. It's really about, and that's kind of where also the data comes in. How do we serve the people to actually get results and get them in housing? And it's about the access to housing. It's about building housing and the right services. I also it's about community building and looking at, it's a neighborhood issue. We have neighbors who are in housing and we have neighbors who are not in housing. And strengthening a neighborhood should include looking out for all neighbors and really looking for the strength in everybody and build that neighborhood together. And that's where the resources also come in. Let's invest in our neighborhoods.
And the bottom line is a money issue too. And we have to get people willing to, it has to be a big enough issue that people spend a lot of money, devote a lot of resources to it. And resources are really tight in Nashville, even though we're this booming city. The resources are very tight, and this doesn't come up perhaps as one of the number one things. I mean, schools, fire, police, all of that. You know, so how do we get people to spend the money on this? We know it's going to take money. Are people in the right mindset to spend the money on this? In your
I would say, I mean, for one thing, I agree with Reverend Fuzz, 100%. I'm right there next to you. Also, this group of folks, and this is not to push the blame onto someone else, we work with the folks who are on the streets right now, making sure that they get the resources that they need. So we don't build housing, unfortunately. Right? We advocate for housing. We advocate with our friends to make sure that they're getting all the services they need. It is frustrating, super frustrating. And I mean, I would echo what he says we've got to put more money towards this, right? And we've been talking about it for a really long time, and it's really frustrating, which I think also wears service providers down. You get a less passionate pool of service providers who are kind of cranky sometimes when, you know, we're not getting the resources that the people that we serve need.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there have been some recent examples where some cities have said we will, through an election or through the city council, where they incorporated special taxes to solve this problem. Los Angeles, San Francisco, other cities have said, sometimes it was by a referendum. They said, where the city voted, we want to solve this problem. We realize that it's money. I really do believe that if we can show that, just what the Reverend said, and that people will see that there are some effective solutions, that people would be more willing, cities would be more willing to invest money, because you can't solve this problem without more resources.
Those cities you mentioned, are they successful? I mean, they're certainly homeless in LA, and they're certainly homeless in San Francisco. Are they successful? It was last year that LA passed two measures to raise money. One for supportive housing, the other one for services. And San Francisco, it was just in the last 2 months or so that they passed that, where the voters voted to do that. So it's a little too early. But we do know some things, including in Nashville. We do know what works. It's housing and services. We've been able to reduce throughout the country and in Nashville housing among certain subpopulations of people experiencing homelessness. Veterans. Why? Because there was targeted resources and housing and services to that. That same formula will work with everyone else experiencing homelessness. It may need a different service mix, but we do know certain things work, and we just need to invest and so we can scale up to meet the need.
And honestly, we're investing in. Oh, sorry, you wanted to go to a call.
I'll go. But yeah, go ahead.
We're investing already in like a negative way by not investing in a positive way, because it's a cycle, right? People go through cycles, and even if someone did get mental health help or physical health help and they had to go back out onto the streets, they're not going to be in good shape. They will never, until there's this stabilizer called housing to help them feel like a human being again. We continue to pay into the cycle of poverty. So why not pay into a cycle of getting people into housing? Poverty is an expensive thing. And we could spend our money, I think, more wisely.
Let's go to Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, man, this is Kevin. How you doing? I'm a Channel 5 fan. I've been knowing you for a long time.
I know, Kevin. Yes, good to hear from you. So what's on your mind?
What I want to say, Ben, that people don't have to be homeless. They can work, and like how you see a lot of them, they beg for money, and they don't have to live like that.
Okay. All right, Kevin, thank you for your perspective. I'm going to turn. What do you all think there?
Yeah. It goes about housing affordability. In the break, we really mentioned that the more cities boom, the higher the cost of housing goes, the more homelessness you see homelessness. It is. I think you cannot talk about housing affordability if you don't look at extremely low income levels and also living wage. There are a lot of people that are experiencing homelessness. Some live in encampments who actually work and they cannot afford it. And or if there's a divorce, the household that had two incomes now breaks apart and neither one can afford it. There are just so many circumstances that we really need to look at. One of the things that I wanted to mention to the previous conversation was also whatever we invest, we really need to build that infrastructure, the coordinated entry, the coordinated process, and measure outcomes. So we really know what works, and we really need to invest in what works. So,
okay, let's go to Jeff. Hello, Jeff.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I would like to say, fix the problem, not the symptom. Okay?
Yes.
So don't throw our tax dollars. The government doesn't solve the problem. I mean, you talk about the vets. Of course, we have to take care of the vets, no matter what, right? But, you know, you're talking about, like, the hotels, motels, the harbor these people. There are a lot of people on drugs and alcohol that are just wasting our time, okay? Homeless people, okay? There are a few that I agree probably need to, I mean, you have women and children, et cetera, that need to be helped, okay? Churches, civil groups can do that, okay? The government doesn't need to be involved when we have, like, people like you to help with that, okay? We have enough social anxiety without, like, the government being involved. That's it. Thank you so much.
All right, so he's saying the government doesn't need to be involved. It could be churches, and there's some. Well, you heard what he said. What do you all think there?
I think it's a systemic issue, really, and not personal failures. I've met lots of people over the years, and generally, whatever their circumstances are, we're just freak accidents or tragic situations or systemic failures, such as not having a living wage, right? Working so hard for your family and still not being able to provide is not helpful to anyone, right? It doesn't feel good to anyone. It adds to the depression that you probably have. It's easy to go down a spiral. And honestly, I think it's a justice issue and not just a mercy issue. We're looking for the kidney, not just willing to stop with dialysis. And so if you're going to get the kidney, the housing, the support services that someone needs, you have to be able to stop a cycle. And that is really difficult to do, like as a civic group or as a random church group. It takes a coordinated effort to help change policy so that the systemic piece of the oppression can be wiped away and people can actually live into who they are, right, with a system that supports them instead of bringing them down.
There's obviously a justice argument. You know, it's not good at all to see people living on the streets. What's the economic argument? If somebody here is saying we shouldn't be using city resources to combat this, or we shouldn't use so many city resources, what do you say? Well, you benefit. How does the average person benefit by eradicating or by tackling this issue?
You know, it's kind of hard to dismiss the justice issue, to move just to the economics, so I want to try to do both. One, for the justice issue, I think it really goes to the core of what do we want to be as a society. Do we want to abandon our vulnerable neighbors to fend for themselves when we know that what they need to achieve their full potential is housing? The people need a stable place to live. Without that, it's hard to achieve anything. You could, yes, you may have mental illness, but many people with mental illness are not living on the streets. They're staying in housing. Many people have substance abuse or substance use disorders, but not all of them are on the streets. But we know that they will not recover from their mental illness. We know they will not recover from their substance use disorder, or it's much easier if they're stably housed. So we think of it that way. From an economic point of view, we know that there are certain things that save society money. We know that for certain populations, especially people who have been experiencing homelessness on a chronic basis, put them into supportive housing with supports. It saves the city, the state money. They won't be arrested because they have no place to go. They won't be using the emergency room as often, using up precious resources. They'll stay out of. They'll have less frequent hospitalizations, and this has been proven in many cities and many studies across the country that for such populations, it's not only is it the morally right thing to do, and does it help them turn their lives around, but it saves the city, it saves the state, it saves the country money.
And looking even at prevention, which goes back to the systemic approach, if we have safety nets in place that actually work, it's about 10 times cheaper than to have somebody on the streets and then transition into housing and pay for that plus the supports.
And it's tough. It's tough to dismiss the justice issue. You can't just dismiss that. All right, we're going to take a break. And there's the number if you want to call in. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.